afternoon, and welcome to Lunchtime Special. Again, I'm your host, Pastor Cynthia West. I am so grateful you have decided to join us for this short and brief time that we're going to be together discussing identity slash purpose. Before we begin, I so much want to again remind you of the King's Pantry and all of the great work that they're doing, and how, if you will, your support will be so much appreciated. And if you need anything, please call that. They're located on 30 Florence Street in the Bridgeport area, and they're open from 10 a.m. to 1:30. You must bring an ID with you. So please do that, because these are unprecedented times, and you would be so amazed how many people need our assistance. And if you stand with us, we're going to be able to stand with them in a greater capacity. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this, again, lunchtime special. If you wish, again, to ask any questions, we're going to ask you to please place it in the comment section, and we're going to read that as they come in. Now, purpose is a big topic, but identity is even a larger topic. And that's what we want to deal with. We want to deal with identity that leads you into purpose for our youth. But I assure you that anyone listening, you're going to get some tidbits for yourself how to make this thing work out for us. Rick Warren says this: you were made by God and for God. And until you understand that, you will never make sense. None of this will ever make sense. So I was made by God, and I have been made for God. And until I can wrap that around my head and comprehend that, a lot of things in life will not make any sense. Well, here we are again with these great educators whose heart is for the future. And one of the ways that your heart is for the future is when you give time to those that are coming behind you. Many times when we start thinking that we are futuristic people, but you cannot look behind you and see anyone that you have helped, that shows a slack in you being a futuristic person. We must build bridges, and we must turn around and give our hand to someone else and bring them across. I've got today with me some individuals who love giving a hand to the future and bringing it up. Our Dr. Ophelia Rowe Allen, she's an activist concerning youth and their education. She was with us on last week, and we had a great time together. Now, Dr. Allen will not be able to spend this whole time with us, but I'm so glad that she came in just for the short time. Dr. Allen, thank you so much. How are you?
I am good. I'm in my second week of my new position at University of New Haven.
Yes.
And I am enjoying it. I cannot wait to get the students back on campus. So it is scary to say that, but that's where I get my energy. I love talking to young people. I like to hear their excitement and their self-discovery through learning. That is something that I'm passionate about, and in helping them on their collegiate journey.
Yes. And you do such a great job at it. You do such a great job at it. They are so blessed to have you, as well as you're blessed to have them. Our next panelist, our next conversationalist is Mrs. Samantha Lucky. Mrs. Lucky is the principal of Achievement First Bridgeport Academy Elementary School in Bridgeport. She was with us on last week. She's a transplant from New York. Mrs. Lucky, how are you?
Hello, Pastor. So glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. We enjoyed you so much. Will you again tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yes, like you said, Pastor, I am from Queens, New York. I've taught in Newark, New Jersey, in Queens, also in Harlem, and I've been at my current school for the past going on my 6th year, and I'm really excited to jump into the conversation again. Last week was amazing.
It really was. Miss Lucky, when will your children, when are they expected to come back, those who will in the classroom?
We will be opening our doors on September 1st for our kindergarteners and September 2nd for the rest of our students.
Unprecedented times, unprecedented times. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Our next guest is Miss Makia Stovall. Miss Makia Stovall is creative and dedicated to learning and enhancing youth. Now, Miss Stovall was the one that I did not give her bio last week. I gotta say something this week. I will not do it twice. Mrs. Stovall is a dual certified K through 6th grade educator and school social worker, most recently teaching the 3rd grade. She supports administration, students, and staff in her building in a variety of roles, including serving on the school-wide leadership team as a teacher union delegate. She is currently serving as a pre-K3 representative in the elementary level distant learning task force. I am so grateful you came back. Thank you so much. Can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a native of Bridgeport, Connecticut, a product of Bridgeport Public Schools primarily. I did senior year and graduated from West Haven, so I've had urban education and suburban education experiences. And I'm just excited to participate in the discussion today about youth and their identity and the role that we play as educators and administrators.
I am. I'm with you. I'm with you, Makia. I just want to talk about it. All right. Let us get our next conversationalist. This is a creative man. This conversationalist has a passion for youth and their success, seeking to create a baseline of character and integrity. Mr. John Brown IV is a 5th grade English teacher at Capital Prep Schools in Bridgeport. Outrageous. His degree is in English literature. Oh, come on, Mr. Brown. Thank you again.
Thank you for the privilege.
Oh, it is so exciting. I know you did it last week, but will you tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Born and raised in New Haven, graduate of Western Connecticut State University. I started off in a Title I tutor program with the Board of Education in New Haven. And then I transferred over to Capital Prep in my first job, and I've been there for the past 5 years. And this year, I'm proud to transfer over to social justice teaching, which is still a base in writing and reading, but I get to expand more in the choices of literature and the kind of way I get to teach and approach the curriculum.
I know the students are going to be excited. It
Yes,
is
ma'am.
rare to see a male teacher of color, but to have a male teacher of color with such passion, outrageously wonderful. So we are excited to be with you also.
As am I. Thank you.
So welcome. Okay, conversationalists, thank you for joining us. This afternoon, our identity and purpose. The term identity as well is as vast as the term education. So the term we have agreed upon is identity, the individual characteristics which a person is recognized or known. And purpose for us in our conversation, the baseline will be an intended or desired result. Certainly, in these unprecedented times, identity refers to the development of oneself, and purpose refers to the development of what one hopes to accomplish. Now, knowing that identity is not inherited, it is shaped by circumstances and sensitivities. And Dorothy West says, the resistance of self-pity. That's awesome all by itself, okay? Dorothy was not a relative at all. But she says the resistance of self-pity will cause you to develop your identity as well as your purpose. But in this time that we're in right now, what do you believe that youth are identifying themselves by in this unprecedented time? What do you're in there with them? What do you believe they're identifying themselves by?
I think.
Go ahead, Ophelia.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I think what we're seeing now is really how people are socialized, right?
Mm-hmm.
How they're socialized based on their cultural, within their cultural context, the cultural demands that are there, but also the social norms that we're seeing. That is how I see where young people are putting themselves in these different spaces. They are being formed by the different social norms that are out there. They're changing. It's not things that we would normally do that they are doing now. Probably they're much more outspoken than ever when it comes on to their thoughts and ideas and opinions and what they want. You'll see that happen. And in addition to the cultural demands that are on them, based probably sometimes on their backgrounds.
Okay. All right. You were going to say what? I believe it was Sam that was jumping in.
I was going to say, I believe on the elementary level that our students are identifying with what we say about them, what their teachers say about them, what their parents say about them. And I think that what's making this time so difficult is that they've been having to get that communication remotely now. And it looks different, but it's very similar. And I think as educators now, we have to find even more ways to shape their identity through, yes, their achievements, but also through who they are as really good people. How are they being kind citizens? Thinking about the elementary level, how are they sharing with a friend? If you're kind in kindergarten and you continue to be affirmed for being a kind kindergartner, by the time you're an adult, that's going to be innate and that's going to be a part of you.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said it because a lot of times, like Ophelia said, they're very vocal. But if they have been trained at an early age to how to express themselves, even if it's not like, but express yourself in kindness and respect. If I'm tracking you right,
yes, ma'am.
That has a great deal to do with how they will relate as they grow older. What do you guys say?
I totally agree. Like setting up a standard for them, especially being an elementary teacher, that's a major part of our responsibility in elementary grades is building character. And what does that look like? What are rules and why do we follow them? What are procedures and how do we go about it? And how do we interact with other people, our peers, people in the positions of authority with us? And we also reinforce students' relationships and how they act with their parents as well. So I think that's definitely head on.
Yeah, the whole learning curve, even from infancy, has changed. I have the pleasure of having a grandson that's, I think, 3 months old. So his name is Christian, and he's in his crying stages. And I remember one Sunday they were here for dinner, and I have a horrendous voice, but he loved it. And that's all that I cared about because he went to sleep on this voice. And I kept saying to him, Christian, you're such a nice person. And I know you're tired and you want to go to sleep. And I watched how it started triggering some things in him other than, what's the matter? Why won't you go to sleep? What's the matter? I know you're tired, go to sleep. But when I began to sing, just different things would come to my head. I believe that even in this identity, like Sam said, it's what we put in people. It's what we give them to know about themselves that's going to be major because right now, everything is up in the air. Everything is up in the air. And I believe that as we begin to feed them certain information, and I remember when I was singing to him, I said, I know you're tired, so I'm going to walk and you're going to sleep and you're going to be okay. And I got a rhythm. With him. And finally, I don't know how long, because I was creating during that time, he went to sleep. I say that to say, as school begins to start in forming identities, what rhythm do you guys want to set up to get them to calm down and let's approach this thing so that you will win.
I believe something you said, Pastor, really sticks out to me around what you were saying to Christian affirmations. I believe that we need to set up a system where students are being affirmed not just for academic achievements, but like I was saying before, also for their character, their social, emotional learning skills. Because the truth of the matter is, maybe you're not the best at a certain subject, but there's another genius or skill that you have. And as school educators, we have to pull that out and begin affirming that from when they're infants.
I agree. Just break. To all of our viewers, come on and share this with your friends or anyone else. Anyone that you know have children, this is going to bless. And even adults will learn from what we're talking about. I so agree with you. I so agree with you. But when they're boys and they're a little bit bigger, okay, like a little girl, we can give her a little teacup and a little saucer and have fun. But the guy, he wants to see things slammed up against the wall. What can we break and how hard can we hit things? How do you handle all of that, John Brown?
I believe that it's allowing them to know that their voice can be heard. And the one thing I allow in my classroom is that if something isn't understood, it's almost a faking ignorance by a teacher to make it seem like sometimes I make purposeful mistakes to see if they're paying attention, to see if they catch what I've done, to see if I misquoted or if I've done something different. And then at the same time, I want the voice in the classroom to be not only my voice teaching. I feel like students learn from a social interaction with each other and by bouncing ideas off of each other and by having someone else, okay, can you read this from me? How does this sound to you? Before they bring it to me. And I believe that before there was a stigmatism in classroom where it was to ask for help. It was like a shun. And the voice of a student, I believe, is something that's kind of been suppressed subconsciously through not being open by teachers. Because I know certain teachers, as all teachers, we don't want to feel like we know everything, but at the same time, taking that correction or making that mistake in the classroom to be open for a redirection or for the conversation to go left, to hit that side point for that student, to get that clarification, but then to have the talent as a teacher to still bring that whole point back to your main focus and still allow that voice. That voice is the biggest thing for my issue.
Okay. That's a statement that we use a lot, their voice to be heard. We say that a lot, but what does that mean? Because every voice does not need to be heard. So what are we saying? Can somebody explain that to me? What are we saying when we say a voice to be heard?
Well, I look at it in another way, especially for children and also, working with college students. They are trying to find themselves, right?
Okay.
They want to develop an understanding of who they are. Mm-hmm. And they are socialized from within different institutions. So the school, the home, the church plays a big part in their development.
Yes.
And so there are times, one of the most important things for children is for them to feel loved. So when Sam was talking about the affirmation, that was important. But I would also add that the teachers in the classroom, the mentors with who they're seeing, their behavior, that is where students are looking at. They're looking at their behavior and they want to follow those behaviors, right? That is what they know. That is how they develop their thinking, their thought process, and their behaviors also. Again, it goes back to how they were socialized. That is how they're socialized. But most of all, it's hearing. When I said to have a voice, I always try to tell students that they need to know that not because the color of their skin doesn't make them feel that it's wrong for them to be here, or it's right for them to be here. They are loved, they are cared for, we are interested in their development and their success. So for me, their voice is, I want them to also affirm that for themselves. I want them to be at the table to get that, to say, I can say that. I can say this. I am going to college, and you want to be proud of it, right? You don't want to say, I'm going to college because of the resources that were provided to me. So when we say, for me, when they said I want them to have a voice, it's for them to know themselves, who they are. Who am I? I'm just going to quote from my Jesuit background of who am I, whose am I, and how am I called to be, right? And so for students to have that affirmation about themselves and believe in themselves.
Okay. I think in the differences of the variety of different ways that they are affirmed and approved, I'm still sort of, how do we approach this voice thing? How do we approach this voice thing? How do we help them in this voice thing? And here's my reason for saying that. In reality, your voice will not be heard all the time. In the reality of things, no one wants to hear your voice all the time. That's another reality of things. So when we say the voice being heard, are you guys tracking me? What do we really, because in reality, even as co-laborers and workers, there are times that whoever has the authority will say, well, we're not going to discuss that right now. And they have the right to do what? Walk away. And you're not able to discuss it. What are we teaching them, Micaiah, when we keep saying their voice to be heard?
I mean, what I teach children, at least under my tutelage, is that they have a sphere of influence, right? Even at 8 or 9 years old, they have within their social group and within their peer group, their peers listen to them. And as they get into adolescence, sometimes they listen to their peers more than they listen to the adults in their life. And so teaching them what Sam was saying about character and who we are in the being a good person is more important than whether or not you have A's and B's, and what is a good person, what is character, what is respect, what is honesty, what are all these little truths, and what is my responsibility for that in my peer group, in school, at home, and then for the world at large, and the responsibilities that people have, right? We teach them about government, we teach them about authority, who's in charge, and who's in charge from a perspective of positioning in school, at home, in the community, and learning what that looks like, and learning about where they're in charge at in their small group, or when they're working on a project, or on their team sports, or how do they go about leadership in their own capacity, in the classroom with each other, and then in other things that they do outside of that.
I think that helps a lot of parents, because being in the position I'm in, I have a lot of parents who don't know when to tell them enough is enough, because we got this thing out. I want their voice to be heard. Well, I come from the old school, so all of my children are adults. So I'm very, very happy, very, very happy that all of my children are adults. And I'm through with that stage, so to speak. But I think it gives a parent direction, because now, without character, without morals, young people learn profanity at a very early age. They learn anger at a very early age. And a lot of times, I've even had parents discuss, well, they know the word, why can't they use the word?
But I think sometimes, Pastor, we have to create what we call brave and safe spaces for our children.
Okay.
So that they can speak to that anger of what is happening. Sometimes that's where mental health develops because of that, because they're suppressed, right? They're not able to have a safe space or a brave space to talk about what is happening, right? Without probably sometime a parent getting upset, or why do you feel this way? You're not supposed to feel this way. These are things that you should be doing. So sometimes even for the voice, to have a voice to come in, when we said we want them to have a voice, that is also a place to have a voice in the home where you can sit with your child to talk about things and to know that they will not be judged, right? And to know that they are safe in talking to you about it, which probably that's where it should start, right? And that will help them, to start expressing themselves. So if something happened, right, if something happened, they know that they have a place to go, they have
Yes.
someone to talk to, and they have a safe place, right, where they can express themselves.
I so totally agree with that. I so totally agree with that.
I would also just say too, to add on to what Ophelia said about that space, it's this piece around once I have the space, now how do I handle these feelings? Because I think a lot of times, the space can be created and then kids are like, okay, now what? If this happens again and little Jimmy does something that offends me, how do I handle that? What do I do? How do I stand up for what's right while still being able to deal with the real feelings that kids have?
Yeah, and then it's not learning about perspectives, right? What you feel in a situation or what you feel like somebody's intent was not necessarily their intent. So learning how to have a conversation, even at a young age, how do we go about that? Like, how do we have a conversation in the proper way, in the proper tone, and in the proper setting at the proper time, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a time and a place for everything, and all the time is not the time or the place. So
Yeah, that's 100 for me. It really is, because I believe that helps parents have a direction. Yes, we want all of this, but what do we do once this is all out? Once you told me all of the things that have hurt you, how do we then resolve it to flow into purpose? So I agree with you guys 100% about that, because everything has to flow into purpose. And I think another thing is that parents need to know nobody's perfect but the Lord.
Right.
Nobody is perfect but the Lord. The Lord God Himself is perfect. And as long as we're living, we're going to do something interesting. So we have to always keep that. In defining themselves, I believe, Ophelia, when you said the cultural demands and the social norms, can we just tap in again to those social norms? What do the social norm look like for the 21st century person, young person?
I think it's expanded. When I was in school, it was just, my friends in my neighborhood, the people I went to school with, my family members.
Yeah.
Now we have, students in first grade with iPhones, and they have TikTok, and they know how to use it, and they may have an Instagram by third grade, and they have a larger influence. They have more friends than me. And I've been in how do you know 5,000 people? Where do you know them from? And so all the things that other people are doing, and sometimes they use that as a reflection of what they think they should be doing, or what they should have, or what their life should look like. And so they have this expanded arena to look at and kind of create misconceptions about life and development that might not necessarily, and usually is not true.
I so agree. Because in all actuality, with all of these reality shows that look like they should be real, but they're scripted, and all of these things that people are just trying to get some money in their pocket, and all of this influences the young person, and it captures their attention. It captures their attention. What do you think the role of all of this without assistance will end up playing in their purpose? What do you think will happen for their purpose?
I believe some of this what the purpose will kind of throw them off, because I've seen a lot of students where they'll be lost in this world of social interaction through an app. And I've seen where they try to use that means of an app to support their educational learning, but it's faulty, because there's always there's a gray spot with what the app can allow, the safety of the app, and also just who can access what you're seeing. And even when it comes to, and again, I'm only speaking in the middle school between the ages of 14 and 18 as far as what we have and what I've taught, there's an importance to this social media that I don't understand, that wasn't there before. And I feel like I came up when I dated with MySpace, and where it was just pictures, and to do that, it was great. Now everything has to be documented. If you're working on football, it has to be documented. If you're doing something in school, it has to be documented. It's the moving in silence and showing what you're doing when it's actually complete has been diluted. It's disappeared, and it's relied on the visual of, okay, if I don't see you posted on social media, it's not actually factual. If I don't see what you have, it's not saying what you have it. And your proof relies on the social media rather than what is actually seen in the real person-to-person interaction. And then these
Yeah.
interactions are lost. There's coach recruiting going on. There's school recruiting going on through social media, where there's so much that there's lost between the face-to-face, shaking a hand. The personality that you have to present now can be just through a picture where no one can really understand who you are.
And it's so deceptive. It's just so deceptive. And they're so caught in this as being real. When we were growing up, and even it was cartoons, it was cartoons, and it was Wonder Woman, and it was, but you knew, I mean, a little child would know they would try to be Superman, but after you fell down a couple of times, you understood flying is not for gravity. And so you understood that maybe I need to stop jumping off of ledges and buildings and things. And now I think that our young people feel invincible. I think that there's an invincibility, a false invincibility, a very false invincibility that they have. I don't believe they always think that things are reality. Wearing the mask, the importance of that, not shaking, giving up socialization for a while so that you can have a better lung capacity later on. So I think you're absolutely right. Guys, we have a question. Our question is this: how do you balance and ensure they know the difference between fantasy, just what we were saying, fantasy and reality? How can we balance? How can a parent balance?
I think what you said, Pastor, around this piece around taking a break from these social media platforms at times and having a conversation, because what's happening now is that kids are starting to think that I can say something on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, do whatever I want, and it's not going to follow me. And so the question, it is going to follow you, and it is going to be a part of your identity. And so the balance has to be for parents around speaking to kids about their behavior on the internet, because now that conduct is probably going to play more of a part than actual physical in-person conduct. So I think it's communication with them and really being realistic about the fact that, like you said, John, we used to use MySpace, and I don't know where MySpace is now, but like whatever we did, it's still out there, right? And so for them, it's like, take it from experience. Whatever you put out there, it's never going away.
No, once it's in cyber, it's always, and it will stop them from getting certain kinds of jobs and being certified for certain things. Because once it's in cyber, it's also, but this fantasy is so vast. Fantasy is so very vast, and children and youth have vast, along with some adults, we can have some vast imaginations. They imitate the fact that I can do it because so and so can do it, and you don't know what's going on because you don't watch it and you ain't there, and all of that. But how can we work with them to bring their imagination into a realistic realm of borders? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think this is what one of the things that the caller is saying. How can we work with them? Because how do we separate? Most of the cartoons now are not even with humans. They're with beings, so that the generation coming will feel very comfortable in things that don't look normal. But we must save our youth. So the fantasy part is a dream life part. And so I would say to this viewer, one of my suggestions would be is a vision board. I really believe that, I used to think that vision boards were for adults, but now I believe the vision board is for anyone who can think and really are working their plan and do have a purpose. So viewer, I would say a vision board. What a vision board does is that it shows an individual how far you have to go to accomplish what it is you want to accomplish. And on a vision board, there are questions that need to be asked. Does this seem possible to you? Then you begin to teach them what's faith and what are you willing to work for. Okay, so in reality, you get nothing in reality without a price. And so I think the vision board would help them to do that. And there's so much online about vision boards, all right? And the reality of this, guys, the reality, I mean, you didn't get where you are because you sat around and played games all day. I mean, you had to spend some years in education. And it was it easy for you guys to accomplish?
No.
No, man.
You have some experience. How I see Ophelia has left us. She had to go into her meeting. We're so grateful for Dr. Allen. Give our viewers some experiences that will assist them, in this whole run of this race.
I mean, I think we focus a lot on primary school or K through 12 school, but I felt as if after high school is when it all began, right? That's when life really takes off. And you I know for me, going to college and then thinking, okay, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to get a job, and thinking about like giving back, of course, but you're thinking about money as well, right out of college, right? Independence. And you're not thinking about, but I have to get a certification, but I have to get a master's, right? Or what's going to come next. And I think too, even thinking about getting a master's, okay, but I still want to work. I still need money, right? But doing both of those things, it can be a challenge.
Yeah.
And then just think the reality of how much things cost. And I think especially with social media, people see the youth are seeing things. Oh, look, everybody has a mansion. Everybody has a car, a garage full of cars.
Okay.
Rented, or the TV company is letting them stay in Airbnb, or it's not even theirs, and it's very expensive. What does that look like on a monthly basis? And most of us, most people are paying their bills on a monthly basis. What does that look like? Okay, you want a house that big? Let's look it up, especially for your adolescent. Okay, let's look it up. Let's go online on realtor.com. Let's look up a house of the size that you think that you want and what comes in it. And let's look at what would be the monthly price of this. To be able to afford this, how many hours does that compute to, and what career you want to have? So just taking time to do realistic things for the we're not ordinary, but the everyday, like a day in day out, of how we finance our lives.
I think that's important. And when the people, the caretakers around these youth are always crying poor, there comes a fear. Come on, guys, that I don't have to do anything I can so I don't be poor and broke. I don't want to be broke no more. I think that even getting them out of the fantasy into the reality is also the conversation that they have of, it's going to take us a little time. But if I put away bum, we're going to get our vacation. And now what are you willing to sacrifice to make sure that this vacation or this thing comes to pass? So I so agree with you all with teamwork in the reality of this whole thing. And
I
also,
I was going to say,
go ahead.
Something that you've said, Pastor, time and time again is work now or pay now, play later, work now, pay, like, that has to be a reality for our young people. Like, it may look like that person on Instagram is living their best life. I don't know what they're doing, but having the integrity of like, what does it take, right? What is the sacrifice you're going to have to put in? It's going to take you working really hard now, even when it may look like others around you are flourishing. Don't make any assumptions because you really don't know the whole story.
You really don't. And the average person doesn't know a knockoff bag from a real bag anyway. Okay, so we really, really don't. And that's a good point. And like my kids said, I remember in one of my youth classes, what I did was say, okay, what kind of bathtub would you like in your house? And so in their head, they were thinking that a bathtub was going to be maybe at the most a couple of $100. So I came in with all these different bathtubs. Okay, and so they selected the one. and flip that over. That tub is $30,000. See, what you're looking at and what the reality is, that helps them see the reality of all of this. And people just, they sort of back up. But like you said, my kid, put the price tag on it. Don't you say what the price tag is. Let's Google this thing and let's see what the world is saying the price tag is. Now, if you have $100 and you want to invest all of that on one item, how far do you think you're going to get in life? Because it ain't going to work that way, okay? So I believe that. Doesn't that connect with identity? Doesn't fantasy and reality connect with identity was our question. What do you guys think?
There's a big part that fantasy and identity play with one another, Apostle. There's so much that fantasy provides to our youth that
I think we lost John. All right. What do you all think?
I think he's back.
I think he's coming back. John, we have you back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize.
No.
What I was saying was that fantasy and reality do somewhat intertwine hand in hand, because a lot of what my generation of parenting, and I've seen it, one of our flaws is that we pacify our children with so many electronics, and that in order to give us peace, we give them something that's just here and you can maneuver just with here, instead of understanding and giving project-based things that would more so give that understanding of hands-on moving and building something up, whether it is a vision board, whether it is a Lego set, whether it is a wooden nail piece just to make a star on an open yard. There's certain things that fantasy dilutes the actual understanding of how much things do affect you. I had, for example, one student that we have a playground area that we could visit in our school when I was tutoring, and we went to that playground, and one of his friends fell off the playground area. Didn't get a scrape, didn't get a scratch, but he saw it from the classroom as he jumped off. The young man tried to do the same thing, jumped off, but got a real big scratch and scrape. And then one thing he said is, I don't understand. It happened to so-and-so and he didn't get hurt. How did I get hurt? And that never really just went to hand in hand until you just asked that question, because I look back at it, he was a student that was really into gaming, really into cartoons, really into this anime, this fantasy thing. And when he saw that, his reaction was, how come I didn't get the same thing as I've always seen, which was his friend, and when they were trying to do some type of move and there was no hurt, but he winds up with a big gash. And it was just funny to me, now I'm thinking about it, his main concern was not the gash, but how did I get hurt? And it didn't happen. I've seen it in so many times and nobody gets hurt. People fall and this happens. And I feel like so much of gaming and too much time in front of these digital things are just making kids become open to a really impact from reality, a really hard impact. So when it comes to just not even getting what they want, when it comes to a choice in the lunch line, there's two ways it can go in schools now. It can either go okay, or it can go all the way left, where it's wow. Yeah. And I really put that on this real big way on fantasy.
And I like something you said, John. You said pacifying with things, because you want your child to be like so and so on, and you want them to have, but do you really want them to have? Because even the wealthiest have to learn the spending of money, how things really do work. And to pacify them, then they think that life just comes, because they didn't know that took the money from the light bill, or that took the money, and it wasn't even necessary. So it begins to pacify, but they don't understand the reality of what that's going to cost when they grow up. Because, parents need to sit down and say, I'm going to give you an artificial bank account, and it's going to be off of this $100. And we're going to deduct every time you spend something. And you're going to see how this money goes away fast. And if we don't do that, and we don't train them that in that reality itself, that certain behaviors, especially if there's no medical reason, is unacceptable. Certain things are just unacceptable. And if you want, I want to say, the shoes that I learned about, they were, if you want some Timberlands, I don't even know this stuff. If you want some Timberlands, well, those Timberlands cost $265 or whatever. You want that? I so agree. What are you going to give up for it? Because when you guys got out of college, you had to pay student loans. Hey, when you guys got out, you had to deal with the student loans, your place, and all of those things. And nobody knows until they get there. And I think it's our responsibility to teach people, okay, yeah, it costs X amount of dollars. What are you willing to give? So if you're going to give me $15 and we have to get up to $260 for such and such amount of time, you get nothing because you want these Timberlands. And I hope that helps that parent a lot because it really does mean the identity, the proudness you feel when you earn your own, the proudness. I guess you all know what I'm talking about. It's just being proud of yourself when you did it for yourself.
And there's a real difference once, when your parents or your caretaker give you, and then when you're like, I got it, right? Like you could give it to me, but I got it myself. And you just feel so assured and you feel like you got a new wallet, you got a little purse. Like you really think you're doing something when you get your own.
You want to show everybody,
right?
I bought this.
Right. I think back to my first job and I got that little debit card. I was like, I'm so cool. But really and truly, it did help build my identity to want to work because I see when you work, you get good things.
I mean, it's very good. It's very challenging. Even when you work around the house, whatever it is, that accomplishment. How are we as caretakers causing young people to recognize the value, their value to the world? How do we get that in them? But all of this racism and I don't know if we'll have enough time, but we want to tap into that. I don't think our young people really understand how valuable they are to the world, to what they can be, their future potential, how valuable. You all have any suggestions of how we can get this into them, their understanding?
I think one of the key things is just teaching them that they are the future of our worlds. Everything that's here now, everything that's to come, every invention, every scientific development that they make is going to be their responsibility. And that they are going to make sure that we're taken care of, their grandparents are taken care of. And that's a conversation that you have with them. And what you decide to do with your life, whatever that is going to make the world a better place. What changes do you want to see? And you're going to be that change. You have a responsibility for that. That's really important. And I know we discussed that even, in third grade when we talk about, civil rights leaders, or we talk about different people and inventions, the Thomas Edisons, these new inventions, Uber, and we discussed, obviously, as millennials, how much things have changed from when we were in school to where they are now, even with technology, that somebody had to come up with that.
Somebody.
So just, having those conversations with them about how important they are for the future.
And I believe too, to what we discussed earlier in like the elementary level around social emotional learning, that parents can start speaking with kids about the value you add to your school community. So when you go to school and you listen and you follow directions, you're adding value to your school community. When you use your voice in a positive way to help a teammate or to just express something that's going to add to the class in a positive way. And then when they come home, affirming them for that. And then I believe too, similar to what Micaiah said, we have to tell them now, like, you are our future leaders. If you don't like what's happening in the world, the only way for there to be change is for you to do what you can do. As you said, Micaiah, in your sphere of influence, right? What are they doing now? And what are we like stamping for them as that's what a leader does. Standing up for right, having integrity, that's what a leader does. That's how you add value. And not just for you, but helping out a friend or telling someone, hey, come, let me help you with this. Even from a young age, that's teaching them how to add value to others' lives.
Okay.
I like to add also is just with parents and their children, the understanding that with every action there is a reaction, whether it's good or bad, and to show them that no matter what they do, whether if it's taking the trash out on time, whether it's doing the dishes as a basis, that, and then also installing routines. I hate to say it, but it's like my mother used to literally put on the side of the mirror when I was a child the checklist of what I had to do every morning before I went to school. Wash your face, brush your teeth, shower, make sure you clean up the bathroom, take your towel, put it in the laundry. And those habits, even when I went to college, like my roommates, I was different because of the way that it was installed in me, and those certain base things. Those certain base things are get it. And it's that. And I remember when I was a kid, the first scripture I ever memorized was on the fan in one of my churches. It was Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way.
Mm-hmm.
That whole piece just puts into everything, the routines, the structures, the smallest thing, and letting them know that even missing it or not doing it, it has an action. If you don't take the trash out, well, the trash builds up now. If you don't stay on your routine, you're now off track. If you don't clean your room properly, you want to have a friend over, well, you can't. Your room isn't clean. Mm-hmm. Certain small things create that open ability to build on bigger responsibilities and bigger conversations and bigger topics for the parent and the child, I believe.
I agree. I agree with that, because the mere fact that they don't know what to do, that it really is the caretaker that will have to say, making up your bed is a major thing in the morning. The military will not allow you to move until your cot has been made. And I was listening to a general say that when you make a person make up their bed in the morning, that is their first great accomplishment, to straighten up what they messed up. It's like the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, and he thought that Miyagi wasn't teaching him the karate. But in all actuality, when you make up your bed in the morning, that's your accomplishment. Whatever trouble I get in, I can get out. And you're training yourself to do that instead of seeing the mess and walk away. So it's like Miyagi. And I think when caretakers get it like that, it's like a Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. And when he goes to the tournament, he knows wax on, wax off, and he's able to block himself. And I believe that this is what all of this will eventually begin to do. Their value to the world. Would you all agree that it probably stands with how much value they receive at home? What do you have to say about that one? I can't be valuable to the world. If I walk in my house and somebody's always critiquing and criticizing me, I'm not going to be able to have the value that I need. What were you going to say, Markia?
I think that definitely is where it starts. And like, even from what John was saying about the roles you play in your household and like how you contribute as a team. Like, your house is a community, your house is a team. And when you're younger, the things that you learn how to do and the roles that you play, like we all have roles in our household alone, and how we contribute to that team at home starts to build that foundation of being valuable. Like, this is what responsibility is. That's how I meet responsibilities. And then learning identity and confidence in doing things, right? You first learn your confidences at home. So I think that definitely is where it starts.
I agree. And I believe too, as you were saying, Pastor, if I don't feel at home, or if I feel I'm being critiqued at home, how will I have value outside of my home? I believe that kids have to feel a part of their family and know their role in the family. Now, if that role is, I'm a child in my family and I have responsibilities, but I also know that there are other people in my family that play roles that support me and believe in me. Like, that's also a piece around belief. We'll see a lot in schools, kids not believing in themselves and having not the confidence to even try. And I
Yeah.
think that does come from history of like either former grades or even in other situations at home, outside of home, where it's like, if someone doesn't believe in me, I won't even try. And that's why some kids are really invincible in some ways because their parents are like, you can do anything, right? And so like having that balance.
My granddaughter, London. London, you can do it. I sure can. Boom. And I'm like, not that, not that. It becomes wonderful. But we also want to, because our time is already gone just about. But we want to make sure that we say to these caretakers, if you found that you have certain areas that you have not been great or wonderful in, you're going to be all right. All you have to do is just start all over again and be encouraged about yourself. I believe that God puts things like this in our way to show us there's a greater way, there's a better way, and there's a mightier way with this value piece. All right. Because I want to hit a little bit on this racism. We have about 10 more minutes, I think. So in this racism piece, because racism is the key word right now. It is the tag, racism this and racism that, and it's us against them kind of thing. It's the people of color against them kind of things, and we're leaving a set of children out of the loop, and that's what bothers me a lot about it. Pew Report talks about the height, and I don't have time, the height of the biracial marriages right now. So what are we doing with that child that maybe the dad is Caucasian and the mom is another race, Black, anything, another race, and that child is going to be listed as white? Caucasian, because you are whatever your father is. That's the race you will take on. So how are we going to help these young people that are caught in the middle of this? Because according to Pew, there is now a breaking out of a fear of how they're going to accept all of this racism. What would you all suggest?
Well, I believe that yes, we have conversations about racism and about systemic issues, but multiculturalism is America. Even in Bridgeport here, our population of students come from so many diverse, multiracial
Yes.
backgrounds. We have to celebrate diversity and give them opportunities of what that looks like, whether that's a project, whether that's bringing something from your home, whether that's reading books about different cultures and learning about different backgrounds. That's extremely imperative. And we all come from different multiracial backgrounds when we really think about it in our families alone. So many marriages, so many different people coming together to make one family and one community, and branching off into other communities at large. So just having the conversation and exposing students and being even for adults, giving them the experiences and letting them learn. As the adult, you have areas where you need to learn yourself and you need to research yourself and be more exposed in understanding multiculturalism and how do you pass that on to your children.
I think us just talking about it and putting it out there in people's faces, that you have to be very careful and concerned of how you present certain things, because right now America is not just vanilla ice cream. It just isn't. Nothing right now. I mean, just with this pandemic alone, nothing right now is vanilla. Nothing. Everything right now has a complication to it or something in it that needs to be recognized and identified. And these are the young people that are coming into your school, and we don't want anyone feeling as if because of this, I can't bum, 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 or because of this, I can't. And I think you put it has to be a conversation. It really has to be a conversation, and it has to be a highly explained conversation. And I'm just such a big advocate of this because of my grandchildren, such a big advocate, because I don't think that we stop and think that even if I'm Black and I marry I married a Black man, but if I had married a Jamaican or whatever, those children, that's a mixed marriage. And so even though we say people of color, everybody's not a color. So I think that just saying it, we don't have time to get in it, but I think it's a really great discussion. What about you? What about you guys? You think so?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think so. And I think what Micaiah said around talking about it, and also it's a piece of identity. And so children have to be educated on their identity, all parts of it, and be able to respect the differences of the other identities.
We all can't wear natural hair. I can't have natural hair. My natural hair is curly hair. And so if I had natural hair, it's just going to fall flat, curl up, and lay there until I pick her up again. So, and I think this is so good, but you're not less anything because you can't do certain things. Well, guys, it has been wonderful. We want to thank Dr. Allen, who had to leave. I thank you guys so much. And to our audience, thank you for listening. We hope that we have enhanced your thinking, opened up your insight. We hope that you just had a relaxing conversation as we talk about things. We're not saying that everything we say is written in stone, but what we are saying is if we had a conversation about it, we're pretty much on target. Have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy. And remember, identity leads into purpose. God bless you.